Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Pugs' channel. Tonight I'm doing a retro review of Defense Grid: The Awakening. It's a tower defense game, and in my opinion, the best one out there at the moment. It's got simple, solid gameplay mechanics, but each mission requires different thinking in order to do well in. All tower defense games rely on four key pillars for their gameplay. There's the aliens you fight, the maps you fight them on, the towers you fight them with, and the points you get for fighting well. Let's look at the maps first. In each map, the aliens will send waves of units from their starting point through to the core housing and then onward to the exit point. Often the exit point is the same point as the entry point for them, so often they just go back to the start. And different aliens can carry different numbers of cores, and if you lose all of them, the game's over and you've lost. On some maps, there are multiple entry points and multiple exit points. There can be multiple core housing units, and there can even be completely separate paths that the aliens can take. If you manage to kill an alien that's carrying a core, it'll drop it and it will slowly float its way back to the core housing unit. However, if another alien comes along, they can pick that core up and then turn around and head for the exit. So who are these mysterious aliens, and how do they plan on taking our cores from us? Well, first up we have the Swarmer. These guys come in big groups. They can come in either small packs or a big long chain. Often they'll come mixed with other alien types also, and these guys are really weak to area of effect towers. They've got low health but large numbers, so area of effect towers, their damage will be multiplied by the number of aliens they're hitting at any given time. So these guys are perfect targets for area of effect. So your Inferno towers and your Concussion towers. Gun towers are also quite good at them because they're so fast firing. As soon as they kill one, they'll move on to another one. They're never wasting any of their damage per second. Next up is the Walker. These guys are your kind of most basic alien type. They're vulnerable to pretty much everything and not particularly susceptible to anything. Gun towers and laser towers are my personal favourites for taking these guys out. Our final Walker type alien is the Rhino. These guys are tanks and they can take a ton of damage. They also come in big long chains usually, so area effect not terribly useful against these guys. You want your high damage towers like your lasers and your cannons. So they're your three basic kind of aliens out of the way. From here on, things get a little bit more interesting. Next up we have the Racers and the Rumblers, which are just a larger, tankier version of the Racer. These guys move fast, about twice as fast as than general pace, so all the Walkers are just medium paced. Because these guys move faster, what it means is they will merge with other waves. If you've got a particularly big map, one wave will come in, it might be Walkers, and then the next wave might be these Racers, and these guys will actually catch up to and overtake that previous wave. Now, if they happen to do that at a point where all of your towers are, it basically means that all your towers are dealing with two waves at once. So when these Racers merge with another wave, they're areas of the map where you're weaker, because if you've got all your towers stacked there, well, your towers can only fire at one thing at once, and they'll fire at the Racers, which gives the previous wave, the slower wave, protection, because they're not being shot at while they walk past your towers. You don't really build a specific tower type to defeat Racers and Rumblers. It's more about your tower positioning. Essentially, the closer you build your towers to the start of the map, the more likely it is you will have dealt with a wave before the next wave of Racers and Rumblers come through in order to merge with them. But it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes you'll have Racers within a wave that come in just a little bit later, and so they will merge with your group just as they're passing your towers built at the start of the map. It's really knowing what the map is, what waves are going to be difficult for you, and building appropriately. Alright, next up is the aliens that give me the most grief in games. The Bulwark and the Spire. These guys are the first guys that have shields in the game, and shields on an alien are only damaged significantly by gun towers, cannon towers, and Tesla towers. So all the laser towers that I build, all the Inferno towers, all those, pretty much useless. So you blast away at their shields with your gun, cannon, and Tesla towers until they're depleted, and then you can attack their hit points. They usually have very few hit points compared to shield points, so they usually die pretty much straight away after that. The more annoying type of the two are the Spires. These guys are the upgraded versions of Bulwarks, and what they'll do is throw a shield over everything nearby, which means a Spire can walk in surrounded by a group of Swarmers, and before those Swarmers can be damaged, the Spire's shields have to be depleted. So anything that's shooting a Swarmer under the shield will instead deplete health from the Spire's shield. Alright, next up we have our stealthy aliens. Now the first of these is the Lurker, and they have their own inherent stealth field, which means only towers that they're right next to can see and shoot at them. This means that towers that have a minimum firing distance, like your cannon and your meteor towers, are pretty much useless against lurkers. The other tower you can use is the command tower. The command tower will reveal all stealth aliens in a radius around it, which means that any tower that is within range can fire out and shoot them. Good guns against, or good towers against stealth aliens are guns, and AoE towers can be quite useful too because they don't have a huge number of hit points. The second type of stealthy alien is the decoy. These guys aren't stealth themselves, instead they stealth everything in a radius around them. This means that a decoy with a bunch of swarmers around it, all of the towers will focus on the decoy first while your swarmers walk past unscathed. Decoys are real tanks too. They can take a ton of damage, so you want your high damage towers like your lasers and your cannons to take these guys out. However, area of effect towers are also quite useful. The aliens hidden underneath the stealth field aren't shielded, so if an area of effect tower is targeting the decoy, it will hit the other aliens around it also, despite the fact that they can't see them. Okay, our second to last alien type are the spawning alien types. The first one is the Seeker. Now, Seekers are slow, which means, like the racers, they can merge with other waves. So if they come in first, they're nice and slow. A medium speed wave or a racer speed wave can catch up to them at the same time that they're going past towers, and effectively means you're fighting two waves at once. What Seekers will do is spawn aliens constantly. Usually there's a period at the start after they enter the map where they won't spawn anything, and then they'll start spawning aliens, and it can be any alien type they can spawn to. It can be boss aliens, it can be little swarmer aliens, whatever. And then they'll constantly spawn these up to a limit, and then they'll stop spawning once they've spawned all of them, or they're dead. They're quite tanky too. One important thing to note with Seekers is that you get points for each alien that they spawn, but even if you kill the Seeker before they've spawned all the aliens, you'll still gain those points. It's just added to the Seeker's total. So there's no penalty to your score if you kill a Seeker while it still has aliens to spawn. And in fact, that's usually the best way to deal with Seekers. If you can kill them really quickly, like right near the start of the map, you're going to be wasting a lot less damage output on all of the aliens they spawn compared to simply killing the Seeker. Once Seekers start spawning aliens, almost anything that it spawns is going to be faster than it, and so your towers will target the thing it spawns instead of the Seeker itself, which means Seekers become even tankier. By the time you kill the thing it spawned, it's about to spawn another one, and your towers will focus on that, and so on. And so your Seeker keeps walking through spawning aliens essentially to protect itself. The second type of spawning alien is the boss spawning alien. That's the turtle. Turtles are big tanks. They're basically like carriers. They carry aliens inside them, and when they die, they'll release the aliens in a big group. You fight these guys basically the same way you fight Seekers. You want to kill them as soon as possible once they've entered the map so that you've got the longest possible time to damage the group of aliens that comes out. Especially you want to kill them before the aliens get to your area of effect towers, because if the turtle gets past your area of effect, then your area of effect towers aren't doing their job, which is dealing with big groups. Okay, our final alien type are the tanks, the big juggernauts. The first one is called the Crusher, and this is basically a slow alien. So again, like the Seeker, it will merge with waves coming in behind it, and it just takes a ton of damage. Use your high DPS towers like your laser towers and your cannon towers to deal with these guys. The other version of the Crusher is the Juggernaut. These guys have about half of their health as shields, and so you've got to deplete those shields with your gun and cannon towers and maybe Tesla towers before killing them with your laser and cannon towers. Our final alien types are our Dart and our Manta. These are our flyers. Manta is just a tankier version of a Dart. They don't move at different paces, and they don't have any special abilities. These guys will fly along a predetermined path, and you can't modify it in any way. You've just got to take them down. Great towers for taking them down are the Missile Tower, which only targets flyers, and Gun and Cannon Towers are the other two. One thing to note with the flyers are that once they grab a core, if you kill them after they've grabbed a core, you still lose the core. So make sure you take these guys out before they grab a core. Okay, on to the towers. Our first tower type is the Gun Tower. This is your old reliable. This tower does everything. It's the cheapest tower, so you'll use it to path the aliens, i.e. build to block off routes that the aliens can take that you don't want them to take, and they're useful against everything. They've got a moderate range, they've got a very high fire rate. So as soon as they kill something, they'll move on to the next one. So they're not wasting any of their damage per second. And they are capable of burning through shields and taking on flyers. So they can do everything. They don't do anything exceptionally well. The only real weakness that the gun towers have is that they have to turn to face the aliens they're shooting at. If you position them such that they're constantly turning backwards and forwards to target different aliens, then they're losing a lot of their DPS. Upgrading gun towers significantly increases their damage. Next up is the Inferno Tower. This is your first area of effect tower and also your first heat-based tower. So these won't work against shielded aliens, but they will cause a little bit of ongoing damage or damage over time after it has finished burning an alien. The Inferno Tower's area of effect is in a line directly away from it, so you want to place it on a corner where the aliens move past it and then walk directly away from it so that this tower affects as many units as possible and thus maximizes its damage. Upgrading your Inferno Towers again significantly increases the damage. If you want to keep using them past waves 1, 2 or 3, you really need to upgrade these to be able to do any meaningful damage. Use these towers primarily against swarmers and walkers. Next up is the Laser Tower, or the Disco Tower as I like to think of it. Laser towers do high damage to a single target and also apply a damage over time burning effect. Because of this, the best way to position these towers is so that they target multiple opponents, because each time they flick onto a alien, it'll apply the damage over time. Doesn't matter how long it's targeting it, the damage will still be the same. So the more aliens you apply the damage over time effect to, the more damage this tower is doing. The Laser Tower is a heat-based tower, so it won't affect shields at all. If you're against shielded opponents, make sure you've taken those shields down with guns or cannons first, and then allow your lasers to mop up what's left. Unlike the gun tower, the Laser Tower has a 360 degree field of fire, so it can instantly flick between targets on one side of it and the other. Upgrading Laser Towers again dramatically increases the damage they will do. Next tower is the Temporal Tower. The Temporal Tower is a damage multiplier tower because it slows all aliens in its area down to about 50% of their speed, which means you can keep aliens trapped in a particular area where your towers are all built for longer, meaning your towers have longer to do more damage. Unlike other towers, upgrading the Temporal Tower costs the same amount at each level. So it costs 300 to build the base level, then another 300 to upgrade it to level 2, and another 300 to upgrade to level 3, as opposed to other towers which cost twice whatever the previous level cost. Upgrading Temporal Towers will increase the radius of their slow. Cannon towers are long-range, slow-firing but high-damage towers. They have a minimum range, which means they won't attack aliens right next to them, which means you build them a little bit away from whatever path the aliens are going to take. They're good against tanky aliens because they do a lot of damage. You don't want these guys firing at little swarmers because they'll waste damage essentially. If the swarmer's almost dead when this fires at it, then sure, it'll kill it, but about 90% plus of its damage will be wasted. Upgrading cannon towers increases the damage and slightly increases the range of the towers. Next up is the Meteor Tower. This is the most frustrating tower in the game. It has the longest range, but its projectiles have a travel time. So, unlike the cannon tower, which will instantly hit the target it's firing at, the Meteor Tower fires a projectile which will slowly arc across the map and hit whatever it's targeting. The problem with it is, because it's so slow firing, a lot of the time what it's shooting at will be dead by the time it gets there. And also quite a lot of the time, the AI isn't smart enough to figure out where the alien it's firing at is accurately going to be. Upgrading the Meteor Tower increases its rate of fire slightly, but not the projectile speed, and it also adds a small area of effect to the explosion when the meteor hits the target. It also increases the Meteor Tower's damage. But frankly, this is the tower I almost never build because it is just too inconsistent in its damage. It's better on some maps than others. It seems to be able to target aliens better on some maps than others, but most of the time I just avoid using this tower. Okay, the Tesla Tower. This, similarly to the Meteor Tower, is a tower I don't use very often, but unlike the Meteor Tower, I don't use this one because I haven't really figured out the best way to use it yet, and I'll explain why. The Tesla Tower is an energy-based one, but it will penetrate through shields. It does quite a good chunk of damage against shields. But the best way that the Tesla works is that while it's not firing, it builds up charges, and then once it does fire, all those charges are spent to enhance the damage of its next shot, and it significantly enhances the damage of its next shot. The problem is, once it's spent that, it's really low damage until it has a chance to build up those charges again, which means the wave of aliens has to pass before it can start building up more charges. This means that it has a high initial damage burst, but then the damage really drops off for the rest of the wave. This mechanic suggests that this tower would be perfect as a last line of defense tower. So any one or two aliens that manage to get past your main body of towers, this tower does a really high amount of damage and finishes them off. However, the other aspect of the Tesla Tower is that it has a chain attack, which means at level 1, it'll attack one alien, and then the lightning will arc to another target also. As you upgrade it, the lightning arcs additional targets also, and more of this tower's damage is caught up in those additional arcs, which means, well, if it's targeting multiple opponents, you want it near the start where there are multiple targets still alive. This is the problem I have with this tower. I don't know where to put it so that it is the most effective. Usually when I do use this tower, it's because I'm putting it right at the start of the map so that it does a high amount of damage to Seekers, which you want to kill off as quickly as possible, and it can also really soften up Spire's shields with that initial burst of damage. However, I'm not convinced it's better than just sticking another gun tower next to your temporal field. So you'll have to make up your own mind on that one. Okay, next up is the second of our area of effect towers, the Concussion Tower. This tower will, as soon as something comes within its range, it starts firing, but when it starts firing, it's firing grenades at everything within its range. So it just basically spams out grenades, affecting everything around it. This means it's great at taking out aliens hiding underneath stealth fields, and it's also great against large groups of aliens, especially if you can put it in the middle of a kind of like a hairpin bend so that the aliens get hit by it for the maximum length of time. Upgrading the Concussion Tower significantly increases the damage. Our next tower is the Missile Tower. These guys are aerial specialists. They only attack air targets and they destroy air targets. They have a huge range, huge rate of fire, and good damage. Upgrading them drastically increases the damage. A level 3 Missile Tower will absolutely wipe most air waves in the game. It's see one in action and you're like, I wish I had a ground tower that did this. Some missions won't have many flyers, so you don't want to build these because they're relatively expensive. However, if you do build these to deal with aerial attacks, build them right at the start of where the air attacks are going to come in, because you want this tower to deal with all your aerial threats and not have your other towers waste fire, like your cannon towers and your gun towers waste time shooting at these before the missile tower kills them. Our last tower type is the Command Tower. This is a support tower in that it doesn't do any damage itself. What it does is two main things. One, it will reveal all stealth aliens in a field around it. But the more useful task it accomplishes is that any alien that dies within its radius will produce additional resources for you to spend on more towers. Additional resources also equals more points, so it's a great score multiplier, this tower also. Upgrading the Command Tower increases the range of the tower, so the radius of its effects, as well as increasing the percentage bonus you get in additional resources for destroying aliens within its radius. Which leads us nicely into the final part of this video, scoring. Now in Defense Grid The Awakening, it's relatively easy to get a gold star for completing a map without losing any cores. But where the real challenge comes in is in beating your friend scores. So how does the scoring work? Scoring in Defense Grid is based off three things. At the end of the game it sums them up. The first is number of cores retained at the end, and this should be a given. You shouldn't lose any cores on a good run in any mission of Defense Grid. The second point is the cell value of your towers at the end of the game. This point is also kind of irrelevant because of point number 3, amount of resources remaining at the end of the game. Basically, at the end of any game of Defense Grid, you should sell off all of your towers before the game ends. This will add exactly the same number of points to your end score because you'll have those resources in your resource bank rather than getting those resources for the game selling your towers for you automatically, with one key difference: interest. At any point during the game, any resources that you have in your bank will be earning interest, and you get a bonus on that interest depending on how many of your cores remain in the core housing unit. In the example I just gave, you want to sell your towers at the end of the game because you gain the sell value from them anyway, and you're going to earn interest on that value also. So you're going to get a bonus. This also means that throughout the game, you want to buy as fewer towers as possible, because you're only going to get the sell value, which is half price, when you sell them. So extra towers that you don't need, you're effectively losing half of their value from your score. You're also not earning interest on them if you've turned your resources into towers. So keep as many resources as you can in the bank for as long as you can, and keep as many cores in the core housing unit for as long as you can. They're the two things that determine your score essentially at the end of the game. And this is also where the tricky decisions come in. Do you buy 2 extra towers to stop any aliens reaching the core housing and thus losing any of your interest? Or do you hold your money in the bank and allow a few of your cores to wander away for maybe a minute or two and lose that extra interest, but have a bigger base value to earn the interest on? Okay, this is mathematics from high school. This is why we did maths in high school, to win Defense Grid The Awakening and brag to our friends. That's it from me. Hopefully I've given you a good idea of how Defense Grid works, and hopefully I've encouraged you to pick it up. It's $10 base price on Steam, although currently it's on sale for $2.50, and it's totally worth either price. Have fun all!